It's good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy, back with Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew a version 1.0 decklist of the Commander in front of us on my quest to brew the magic world. You know the motto, baby. It's ABB, always be brewing, and that's what we're back to do today. The deck list is going to be down in the description below. So I'd really appreciate it if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, consider checking all those links in the description. I'd appreciate it. But today, we're wrapping up pre-con week with the 4 Final Fantasy pre-con commanders, and today we're taking a look at Y'shtola Knight's Bless, a 4-mana Esper Cat Warlock with Vigilance. It says, beginning of each end step, if a player lost 4 more life this turn, we can draw a card. Note that's on anyone's turns, so there's a chance we can draw some cards on our opponent's turns. And then whenever we cast a non-creature spell with mana value 3 or greater, Y'shtola deals 2 damage to each opponent, and we gain 2 life. It's a very interesting card, and I think Y'shtola, and it interestingly adds a lot of options for us on how we want to accomplish the second ability. There's a lot of ways we could look to do it. I think I'm going to try to do a mix of on our turn and our opponent's turn, allowing us to really take advantage of the both sides of that. But also, we're going to talk about things we can put on her to make her effect better, to actually care about the life gain, care about the life loss, and make it better for us. I will note that normally on Millsy Brews, we have a budget. For this week, I kind of had to let the budget go because we're still in pre-order pricing, and there are cards that I think are 2 or 3 times what they're actually going to be. So the deck cost is a little ballooned, as you see on screen. I think in a couple weeks, if we come back to this list, it's going to end up dropping a little bit, and hopefully it'll be a little bit more from what we expect from the Millsy Brews budget. But I want to say thank you to the channel members. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you're interested in checking out all our videos early for just $1 a month, check it out in the description down below. But all right, there's a lot of ways you can approach non-creature spell. There's so many of them, right? And there's a lot of ways that we can do this to make it effective for us. I love something like Teferi Time Rattler, helps shut down our opponents a little bit from doing things on each other's turns and on our turns. Teferi gives us the ability to cast sorceries at flash speed if we want to and bounce things back. We have something like Exsanguinate that can kind of really lean into this life gain plan that we'll talk about in a little bit, allowing us to have everyone lose X life and we gain life equal to the life lost this way. Orenicus's File Duplication can make a copy of Y'shtola, which is even better because then it just means more damage per trigger, right? Going to 2 to 4 really will make a difference over the course of a couple triggers. Mind Grind can hurt our opponents, having them to have to reveal cards at the top till they hit X lands, and then they all just go into the graveyard. Way to mill out our opponents a little bit and make them hurt. No, for Y'shtola, we only have to pick 2. 1 or 2, right, to trigger her ability. But the more mana we put in, the worse it is for our opponents. We have things like Ring Sight that can go get a card from our deck that shares a color with a legendary creature we control, put it into our hand. Go get maybe a key spell we want at the right time. And of course, if Y'shtola's out, that means we can get any spell in our deck. I like the idea of something like Baleful Mastery, where we could pay 2 mana to cast it. But if we do, our opponent gets to draw a card, but it still counts as a 4-mana spell. So we're still going to get Y'shtola's trigger and exile a creature. We just have a little bit of a downside from it. Frantic Search, right? Drawing some cards and pitching some cards and untapping lands is going to trigger Y'shtola, so we have draw spells that could do it. I love the idea of something like Sea Double. It can make a copy of a target creature or copy a spell. Now, the thing to note about Sea Double copying a spell is copying a spell won't trigger Y'shtola, but I think copying the right spell at the right time could be really beneficial from Sea Double to make things a little bit better. We also have some creatures in the deck that care about life gain and life loss, and not all of them are legendary, meaning that Sea Double can actually copy them as well. Snuff Out is a great removal spell. If you control a swamp, you can pay 4 life rather than paying its cost just to destroy target non-black creature. I love this as an ability, and being able to do this on an opponent's turn means another Y'shtola trigger. Transbones lets us draw and then discard a card, lose a life, and if we cast it from our hand, we get to make a wizard that says whenever we cast a non-creature spell, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. So this can get some damage on an opponent, draw 1, pitch 1, and then we can actually rebound this back to do it again, and you get to cast it for free, meaning we're going to trigger Y'shtola again on the next upkeep. Dancer's Chakrams is a card I actually really like in this precon. So when it comes in, you get a hero token. That's what Job Select does, and it automatically attaches. And it gives the equipped creature and your commander +2/+2 in lifelink. Remember that Y'shtola is actually dealing the damage to your opponents, but it doesn't count as commander damage because commander damage is only combat damage that your commander deals. But this will actually gain us life for each of those 2 damage, right? dealt each opponent, meaning we're getting more and more value back. Eye of Nidhogg, it seems like a really interesting aura. You get to put it on a creature, and it's goaded, has flying and death touch, and becomes a dragon. And then whenever Eye of Nidhogg leaves the battlefield, it comes back to our hand. I love this because then we can kind of force the right creatures at the right time to attack different opponents, right? And make sure that we're not getting hit by them while still dealing the chaos and the damage. We're actually adding Ghouling Impetus, which is a very similar card into what it does. But the difference is it just brings itself back to the battlefield when the enchanted creature dies, whereas Eye of Nidhogg, right, comes back to our hand. We're playing a pair of hopefully Pillow 40 type cards in Ghostly Prison and Propaganda. Both of them force our opponents to pay 2 mana for each creature that's attacking us. This should help not only push our opponents back quite a little bit, but also they're both 3 mana spells, right, that we cast that will count for Y'shtola. And I think that's the big thing when you go into looking at the spells we're casting is, are they triggering Y'shtola and are they good for us? And if the answer is both yes of them, then I think they're worth it. But all right, well, how do we make Y'shtola better? Because truthfully, she's the point of our deck, right? Get her down, get her ability going. Well, we have things like the new Go-Go, which can copy her ability as many times as we want it to. Again, that damage is just great, gains us life, our opponents lose life. Roaming Throne is going to make Y'shtola trigger twice on both abilities, her bottom ability and that top ability to draw us cards. We're going to come in and pick Wizard or Warlock, for Y'shtola, and we're just in great shape. Caduceus, we can equip to Y'shtola, and if we do, she has lifelink, so then she's automatically gaining that life right off her ability. But then if we have 30 or more life, she gets +5/+5 indestructible and can't be dealt damage. Again, really great abilities. It takes off destruction, which is one of the easy ways to remove her. It takes off damage, meaning she can attack and block freely, and we're not worried about it. The only thing that leaves, right, is exile-based removal, but we can deal with that other ways. But I think Caduceus is just not only great for her, but any other creature we can equip it to be a real threat. Grafted Exoskeleton can give her Infect. Remember, she's dealing the damage. So things like Glistening Oil and Exoskeleton, and we'll talk about Pheresis on the next slide. Infect will matter because that 2 damage will then be poison counters, and then we only need 5 triggers from Y'shtola to knock people out with Infect. And that's something we need to be aware of. We're in the perfect colors for it. And I think if you're facing a Y'shtola deck, you should be prepared for that because it's very easy to do. We've got lines for the classic Curiosity combo. Whenever it deals damage to an opponent, draw a card. Well, Y'shtola is going to deal 2 damage to everybody, so we're going to draw a card. In fact, we'll draw 3 of them, right? And then we'll be able to fill our hand and keep the party going. Same thing with something like Steal the Godhead, giving her lifelink and unblockable. Again, making it so that all that damage she's dealing is gaining us life back, right? Because we're hitting an opponent. And I think that's important because it's going to be really easy just to look at Y'shtola and say, okay, I can get these triggers, but what does that trigger mean, right? But when you start giving her lifelink, now everybody's losing 2 and we're gaining 8, right? 2 from her ability, and then 6 because we actually dealt 6 damage with 3 opponents. And now you start to see where lifelink, I think, can get really beneficial for Y'shtola as we're nailing these triggers out. Sigil of Sleep is a card I think feels really good. I actually didn't know about this one until I was looking up some abilities based around Curiosity, right? Like what happens when I deal damage to a player. It says return target creature that player controls to its owner's hand. So every trigger for Y'shtola, we're bouncing creatures back to hand and just really hopefully pushing our opponents back, right? As we hopefully game our triggers. How do we pay off life gain, right? Because at minimum we're going to gain life once off of Y'shtola's trigger, but we do have a chance to do more than that. We could play the classic life gain combos. Remember, we got two copies of it. You have Bloodthirsty Conqueror and Enduring Tenacity, and then we have the classic Exquisite Blood and Sanguine Bond. One says whenever an opponent loses life, we gain that much life. The other says whenever we gain that much life, target opponent loses that much life. All you need to do is have an opponent lose life or gain life while these 2 are on the battlefield, and you'll be able to drain every one of your opponents out. But what I like about this specifically is both sides of this really interact well with Y'shtola. If you have the loose one out, well, you're just netting more life. Now you're gaining 8 life just like you would if Y'shtola had lifelink. And if you're doing the tenacity, now someone else gets to lose 2 extra, right? And these triggers are really stacking for themselves. Starscape Cleric says whenever we gain life, each opponent would lose 1 life. This is important, I'm actually now realizing, because if Y'shtola has lifelink, actually each of those 2 damage triggers that it hits our opponents with are going to be 3 separate lifelink triggers, 3 separate life gain triggers, and more damage, right, with the Cleric and the Tenacity. So you could start to see where giving you Stola lifelink can be really beneficial. There's Exquisite Blood and Sanguine Bond, right? The other half of those two cards. And then same thing with Veto. We gain life, target opponent loses that much life. So we're kind of building this bedrock underneath Y'shtola so that as she loses life and gains us life, we're getting real value on our opponents. I think there's some more ways to look at this. I mean, the card that first came to my head was something like Mind Crank, to start milling our opponents as Y'shtola is dealing damage. There are going to be the graveyard decks that want that and will take advantage of it, but truthfully, most decks don't play enough ways to get things back from their own graveyard, meaning that Mind Crank should hurt our opponents. I think Blood Chief Ascension makes a ton of sense. At the beginning of each end step, an opponent lost 2 or more life this turn, we put a counter on Blood Chief. And then whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, if Blood Chief Ascension has 3 or more counters on it, you can have that player lose 2 life. If you do, you gain 2 life. One, this works really well with Mind Crank, right? Especially if we can get it online. But as we're killing things, our opponents are discarding cards. There's a lot of ways to trigger Blood Chief Ascension, and it's one of those cards that should ideally help prop our deck up and make it really hard to deal with, as we're just hurting our opponents. You can also really, if you wanted to, lean into this Mind Crank angle and make this even better if you want to. I chose to lean a little bit more into the life gain, life loss side, because that's something that interests me. But I think there's another side of that there. And then Reaper's Scythe is just something I really like the look of. At the beginning of our end step, we put a counter on it for each player who lost life this turn. And then a quick creature gets +1/+1 for each soul counter on it. This you can either put on another creature other than Y'shtola and make them a big threat, or just put this on Y'shtola and make Y'shtola a commander damage threat at a certain point. Remember, the Scythe keeps the counters over the course of the game unless someone gets rid of it, so the Scythe is just going to end up probably being a late game threat that our opponents have to deal with. But I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. This is my version 1.0 shot at Y'shtola, and I have to admit, I ended up liking this deck a lot more than I thought I would. If I had to guess, I think of the 4 precons, I would have thought I would have liked Cloud the best, or Titus. But I have to say, this deck idea is really fun. Playing off the life gain and life loss. I've always been, tinkering with the Orzhov-style life gain decks. But going into testing, I think really where the deck gets better is, unfortunately, spending money. Things like the One Ring, these powerful 3 or 4 mana artifacts and spells that are really going to help take over a game. I thought about something like Torment of Hailfire, or some of these other big splashy spells that can not only affect the board, but also trigger Y'shtola. My thought was something like Mirror Maid. You can either copy your own things or your opponent's things, and it's a 3 mana spell. My thought was doubling up on something like Exquisite Blood or Sanguine Bond, right? Or doubling up on another key artifact or enchantment, just to get the ability more than once and really take advantage of that. You also have something like the Darkness Crystal. I think if you wanted to go into mill, the Water Crystal, the blue one's even better, right? Really, really paying off that mill for your opponents. The Darkness Crystal just says if a non-token creature an opponent controls would die, you exile it, and we gain 2 life. So it's just a way to gain more life, reduce our spells, and we could potentially get a creature card exiled with it back onto the battlefield. So just some different options. I think the One Ring probably is the One Ring and the Mirror Maid make a little more sense to me. The One Ring for the protection and the card draw, the Mirror Maid for copying the key thing at the right time. And we're not worried about the life loss from the One Ring because we're gaining at least 2 life every turn, probably. And we have plenty of ways to protect Y'shtola. The other thing we didn't get to talk about in the deck was free spells, things like Fierce Guardianship or Flawless Maneuver or Deadly Rollick. These free spells that are all going to be mana value 3 or greater, we can play on our opponent's turns, but still trigger, Y'shtola for value. But let's do what we love to do on this channel so much and get into our playtests. Remember, the goal of playtests on our channel is not to find magical Christmas land. It's not to show off our best plays, but it's to get in some game scenarios, kind of talk about what we're looking for in a hand, why we're going to keep it, and then walking through some of our setup. So here we're looking at a 3-lander with Decanter of Endless Water. This is a 3-mana rock that taps for mana of any color, but it also gives us no maximum hand size, which is great when we start drawing cards with, some of our effects. We see Ardbert, Warrior of Darkness. This is in the precon. I think it's a really interesting card. So whenever we cast a white spell, you put a counter on each legendary creature you control, and they gave Vigilance. And whenever you cast a black spell, you put a counter on each legendary creature you control, and they get Menace. It's a very interesting ability. I think it'll help potentially in the future, maybe with Y'shtola attacking, if that's something we want to do. Veto, there's one of our Life Matters cards, and it's nice because for 5 mana, we can give all of our creatures lifelink till end of turn if we want to, and then Anguish for some removal. We've got, Y'shtola on turn 4, at least at the moment. It's not bad. We can work our way up and kind of see where we go from here. So I'd say let's just, get the party started. I don't expect to do very much until I get to like get, Y'shtola down, unfortunately, because we really want to start building up value. Now this turn, instead of playing the decanter, we could have played Veto or Ardbird if we wanted to, just to get something else down if we were worried about it. But I kind of like the idea of just keeping the party going here. It feels awkward to play Y'shtola into an empty board, but if I had played decanter this turn, I wouldn't have got to have played Y'shtola. So I kind of like this as an option instead, mainly because now, right, with 6 mana, I thought it was maybe Go-Go plus Veto, but of course that doesn't trigger Y'shtola this turn. So the question is, does it make more sense to does it make more sense to trigger Y'shtola this turn and get the party started? So if I do that, I would probably go something like Veto and then Frantic Search, draw 2, pitch 2. That's going to trigger Y'shtola, right? Everybody's going to lose 2. We're going to gain 2. Veto goes off, having somebody lose 2 more. And let's see what we get. We got Transpose, which is that one that gets us multiple casts out of, which is great. I think we can go ahead and pitch a land. I think we got plenty. Now the question is, what else should we pitch? Go-Go makes a ton of sense with Y'shtola to start copying triggers. I really like Ardbird, but I feel like it's kind of... it may be, unfortunately, the odd card out unless we just pitch the land. I mean, we've got enough mana to go 2 things next turn, so maybe it's just pitch the lands and keep the party going. Again, Yish can attack. It's not like we can't do that. And we've actually triggered Veto, right? Somebody would have lost 4 life this turn because of its triggers. That's going to draw us a card off of, that. So now as we come to our next turn, 6 mana. Remember, Bloodchief Ascension won't get multiple counters on it per turn, but it will allow us to get at least a counter on it. Thought was Go-Go, so we could potentially target, and copy Y'shtola more next turn. But I kind of wonder if it's Ardbert and then just playing Bloodchief Ascension, which would just get a counter on all of our creatures and give them menace, right? Maybe that means we hit in this turn with somebody, being able to, to target and have Ascension go off. We didn't play a non-creature spell this turn, but I think it's okay. We did a pretty good setup here, getting our creatures in. Then as we come to our turn, now we've got 6 mana. I love the Sanguine Bond, but that would be pretty much the only thing we could do this turn. I'm kind of thinking something like Transpose. Y'shtola goes off, doing that life gain. Somebody's going to lose 2 more with Veto, which means that her first ability will go off. But Transpose draws us cards and lets us pitch a card. Come down to pitch C double. Right, and then this is going to go off at the start of our next upkeep. But this is going to leave up Anguished Unmaking, which was my thought. Just gives us an option on our opponent's turns to have some removal and do it if we need to. Go to end step, right, draw a card with Y'shtola because we did have somebody lose 4 more. Again, they had Menace, so they could get attacking as we up the Bloodchief Ascension. Now coming back to our turn, this will be the turn we definitely can make sure that Bloodchief Ascension goes off. Again, let's say for example on our opponent's turn we used Anguished Unmaking. That would have been 2 counters on all of our creatures from Ardbert, right? Because the spell was white and black. It would have had us lose life, but that's okay. I don't think it really matters because truthfully, we would have got rid of something ideal, but also somebody would have lost force. We would have drawn a card here. Right. So now our turn was 7 mana. Again, I love Sanguine Bond just to keep that party going, getting us more access to that. This turn, Bloodchief would go online. We can actually offspring that Starscape player if we want to, but I'm thinking... I think we used our land drop already. So I'm thinking Sanguine Bond. Again, another counter on here. Somebody's going to lose 2 with this, so this is going to go up, and eventually Vito's going to draw us a card. Where this happens on cast, so the Bond won't be out to see it. But again, take some attacks. They have Menace. They're probably going to be able to get in at the end of the turn. The Ascension's online. We draw a card with Y'shtola. And now, we just got some really great value. Hopefully we can make our opponents lose some things with the Ascension. Kill their creatures, which would allow the Ascension to go off. Again, not a bad start. Not the craziest thing we've ever seen, but I think we've got some good value out. We start getting something like Go down to start triggers. I just forgot that turn Transpose would have gone off as well, but Oh, well, I think we basically saw what we wanted to see out of that one. Let's get into playtest number 2. Here we're looking at a 4-lander with that Dancer's Chakras. So again, great for Y'shtola, giving her lifelink. There's Transpose again, and then Murderous Rider. Murderous Rider is really interesting because that Adventure Side's removal, and then we can play it from exile as from Adventure as a creature, right? So I like that its instant side is a 3-value spell, right, for Y'shtola. So not bad. We got the mana for Y'shtola. We got some things to play once she comes down. I think our turn 1 play really matters. Same thing with turn 2. We're just kind of getting our lands in, getting the party going. We could get Starscape Cleric if we want to down here. We really don't have much to do on turn 3. I mean, Fierce is a great thing we can use later, so I think I would just get the Cleric down. Oh, Ardbert, one turn too late. I wish I could have played it last year, but we'll play Y'shtola here. And then getting into this turn, we missed the land drop, but that's, I mean, it's not ideal, but it's okay. We could Spark Double Y'shtola, get a second copy set up for next turn, but I think I just like the Chakrams. Again, it's on cast, so the Chakrams aren't going to be out when Y'shtola's ability go off, but now Y'shtola has lifelink, right? So we can really take advantage of that. Maybe we can hit one of our opponents with a Cleric in the air to trigger Y'shtola, right, to draw a card. It does go off at the end step, though, so it's not like we can play that Swamp this turn, unfortunately. But come back to our turn with 5 mana, and now we've got some options. We've got Removal with the Murderous Rider. We've got Transpose to draw. We've got Fierce Guardianship now live that we can play for free to help trigger our things. We could go Spark Double to get a second copy of Y'shtola and have something like Fierce Guardianship, right, open on our opponent's turns. Just trying to think what makes the most sense. I really like Spark Double because it gives us a second copy of Y'shtola. Now they both can attack with lifelink. Maybe that squeaks enough through for somebody to hit with Y'shtola to draw us a card. But now we've got Fierce Guardianship open on our opponent's turns. It would be 2 separate Y'shtolas being able to trigger, right? Having people lose life, gain us life. People would lose life with the Cleric. We might potentially draw a couple cards, right? If we play something on our opponent's turns, we would actually draw 2 cards, right? Because we have 2 Y'shtolas. And then you could start to see where this kind of mix of lifelink and this lifelink trigger can really work out for us. But as we come back to our next turn with 5 mana, I mean, I love the Exoskeleton. There's just no way to get it on to Y'shtola this turn easily. So my thought would be something like Ringsight. Ringsight could go get us anything we want. This could go get us that Sigil of Sleep to start bouncing creatures. This could go get us Pheresis or something like that if we want to do that. You know, Ringsight could go get us so many things in our deck right now since our commander is all 3 colors and we control it. And we would have a second one right in the... no, sorry, Spark Double isn't legendary, but it could become legendary if we wanted to with the Ringsight to go get something. But again, I think we're in an okay spot. I mean, the only downside of this playtest was just not seeing 1 or 2 more mana, and I think my sequencing could have been a little bit better. But I think it goes to show you we got decent pieces, we got removal we can play right now. We could just hold up the Gift and the Rider if we want to, and hold up the Fierce Guardianship and have plays on our opponent's turns be a little bit more control-y, right? You can start to see where we have those options as well. But let's do one last playtest here. Looking at a 3-lander with Caduceus, the Decanter again for some mana, Frantic Search, and Go-Go. So I like this. We have the Caduceus, again, works well, giving Y'shtola some protection and lifelink. Frantic Search for the draw, Go-Go for, the copying. I kind of like it. We've got an interesting start here. Not much we're probably going to do on turn 1 and turn 2 at this point, as we just don't have the mana to do it. Now here on turn 3, I guess the question is Decanter, Caduceus, or Go-Go. Go-Go could be good in the future. Decanter, I think, just gets us more mana in the long run. I think 4 here for Y'shtola. Now we've got her set up and online for next turn. Now here with 5 mana, unfortunately, we don't have too much. I mean, we can play the Caduceus, it just won't be able to give her lifelink right by the time it comes in. Arenicus could be fun to get another copy of her. Right, that isn't legendary, just to set us up more for next turn. So that as we come back to our next turn, now we've got 2 Y'shtolas, so we're automatically triggering both of their draw abilities if we play something. Of course, we missed the land drop again, but I'm kind of thinking just playing Caduceus, which is going to trigger both of them, and then equipping. That way she gets that indestructible cause. Again, now this will call both Y'shtolas to draw right at our end step, and we pitch something because truthfully the lack of mana is getting a little bit out of our hands, but it's okay. Now we're sitting in decent shape, and now it's 6 mana. I mean, the prison couldn't be a bad idea. Eventually, at some point, we're going to start getting hurt, right? Do that there for those. I guess we could Ardbert first if we're going to do that to get the counters, right? And the vigilance, just so that way they can attack if we want them to. And again, I think we're in good shape. We just lost a little bit of the consistency, which I think is something in testing is something we can figure out, and something we can keep looking for as we continue to try to test the deck and make it better. But I'd love to know, what do you think of Y'shtola down in the comment section below? Is it something you're interested in as an idea for a commander you like? If you are building Y'shtola, what do you think of my list? Is it something that's similar to yours? Are you doing something different? I'd love to chat with you down in the comment section below, and I will catch you on the next one.